Hello, Out Bosses. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to this week's episode of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. As the show nears its 100th episode, today's show, along with episode 99 and 100, will offer some very special content. For this week's show, we'll be taking you back to a live panel discussion I moderated at the National LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce's Leadership Conference, and this took place in Philadelphia in August. The panel features several familiar out bosses, including Elaine Bennett, who is the founder of Bennett Inc. She was featured on episode 67 of the show. Eduardo Plassar, who is the founder of Fearless Communicators. He was featured on episode 56. And going all the way back into the Out Entrepreneur Vault is Annie Weller, who is the founder of the Leadership Lab, and she was featured on episode 20. During the live podcast recording, these inspiring out bosses share how they leverage their rainbow superpowers in their businesses. These superpowers are gleaned from years of lived experiences that have helped them build thriving businesses. If you've ever wondered if or how your LGBTQ identity offers a competitive advantage in the world of business, this live podcast recording is just for you. So for now, sit back, enjoy, and continue being your authentic selves 100% of the time. So thank you all for coming. Really appreciate your time. If you're here to learn about leveraging your LGBT superpowers in business, you're in the right place. So thanks for spending your morning with us. My name is Rhodes Perry, and I'm the host and creator of The Out Entrepreneur. And I started the show about 2 years ago, really early in my business, and I was seeking mentorship myself to talk with other LGBT business owners who are much further on the path, and some folks who are also starting out as well, really to talk about business, and most importantly, talk about how our LGBT identities impact our business, how they can help us grow our business, to get real about some of the challenges that pop up for us in business. And I'm close to almost 100 episodes, which is really fantastic. Yeah, so I've been recording every week. Yeah. So we have a range of people who've seen the show grow from the beginning. So Annie Weller is here joining us on a panel to talk a little bit more about one of the questions that I really like to explore, which is, given our lived experiences, what are some of the LGBT superpowers that we have? And how do we leverage them in business? So that's what we're going to dive in really deeply today to talk about. And then Eduardo, who's from Fearless Communicators, was on, I think, episode 50-ish. Yes.
Right in the middle.
Yes.
And take it.
And you really inspire me because as an introvert, you're also a public speaker. So just kind of balancing the dynamic of always having to be on when you're in front of people and how you take care of yourself afterwards.
Awesome.
And then Elaine Bennett, who was, I believe, one of my later episodes in the 60s, and from Bennett Inc., which I loved learning about your process. So we'll talk a little bit more about your business. But these are just a sample of some of the really amazing business owners that I've had the opportunity to talk to. And it's been a really great experience. So if you are in business, just a show of hands of folks who have businesses in the room. Okay, awesome. Okay, so if you're in business, a podcast, if you're into talking and chatting, especially on the phone, it might be a great way of just kind of getting your expertise out into the world. It can be a lot of work, but there's a lot of people out in the community who could help. And I found it to be a really great advantage of just getting my voice out there and my perspective on running a business, which can be difficult. So the show is about inspiration. So I'm just going to ask everyone, are you ready to inspire fellow out entrepreneurs?
Absolutely.
I love it. We didn't coordinate that at all. So
or yes.
Yes.
See, I was a yes.
Yes.
I love it. Okay, so why don't we just go down the row and we can start with you, Elaine, just to tell us about your business and what motivated you to get started.
Well, I will answer that question at some point today. But if you look at my business card, it says I'm a business storyteller. So I want to tell you a story that happened to me today, an hour ago, down in the Starbucks. So a woman came in. She's a straight woman. She's here at this conference and fortunately not in this room. And we've been talking to each other over the course of the days. So we've gotten a little more familiar with each other. We were talking last night at the party. And so she asked me a question that, you wouldn't maybe normally ask somebody at a business conference. She said, how was your evening after the party? And I said, oh, well, it was fine. I went to bed with Rachel Maddow, and and she said, "Oh, but Rachel's married to a man." And so I said, "No," because maybe she doesn't have cable. I don't know. But I think what happened was that she maybe heard somewhere along the way that Rachel was married, and her unconscious bias kicked in as a straight person. Oh, well, if you're married, if you're a woman married, you're married to a man. And so my superpower that I unfurled in the Starbucks was, talking about, visibility, and not my visibility at that point, because she already knew that I'm a lesbian, but talking about Rachel's visibility, which, who knew? So I write speeches for CEOs, and I also help small and mid-sized business people learn to write better for themselves. And one of the things that I focus on is storytelling, and stories like that, which nobody else in this room could tell because you weren't there. It wasn't your lived experience, but it gives me an opportunity to talk about unconscious bias in a way that nobody else here can. And when you're in a place where everybody could talk about unconscious bias, they could say, my company, fights against but nobody's going to tell you a story that's going to stick with you. So that's what I teach people. And Rachel was good for me. I don't know how good it was.
That was such a fabulous lead-in. So it was 1983, Miami, Florida, Pinewood Acres Elementary School, show and tell. And I was really excited, and I brought in this stuffed animal seal, which I call Sammy the Seal. And I stood in front of the class, and I said, seals are mammals. They live in the water. They eat fish, and sometimes they're eaten by sharks. And I was like, yes! And then as I went down, I thought, that went really well. Let me share something else. And then I said, I named him after someone in this class. And then I said, I named him after Brett MacGyver. Now, the name of the seal was Sammy the Seal, not Brett MacGyver. But basically what I did in second grade was out myself by naming the boy that I had a crush on. And the moment I said that in second grade, what I told myself is that when I stand in front of people to speak, I can't be myself, I can't speak the truth, and if I do, it's dangerous. And I'm 41 years old, and that fear is still present every time that I speak. So I'm a public speaking coach. So I'm on the other side of your story. And thank you so much for starting with a story, because it's so important. And I was an actor for 15 years. It took me coming out of the closet and getting masterful at playing other people to ultimately become comfortable playing myself and being myself. And what I found as an actor was that was a lot of fun. It was great to be on stage. It was a privilege to perform. And I was looking at the world around me, and I said, there's so many stories that have to be told. And there's so much that I'm passionate about. There's so much that I'm committed to. Justice, peace, equality, sustainability, freedom, all of that. And I was like, I don't have to be the one who speaks about it. And what I can do is work with the people who are poised to make the biggest difference and then elevate how they speak. So I work on content creation and then also on delivery. And I've been in business now since 2015. I pivoted. And one of the gifts that I have is I have an opportunity to travel all over the world, and I create these events where I work with cohorts of women on the crafting of TED-style speeches as an opportunity to, confront the fear and the shame, and stand in their authenticity and their vulnerability and their power. And it's a real privilege as a man to be able to hold that space, because even though I do identify as a gay man, I have the privilege in a space of women, I can acknowledge that I'm a man, right? And it is with their permission that I'm able to hold space. And I've been called a story doula.
Oh,
so
how lovely.
The ability to kind of bring a story to light, to give birth to the story, to distill a life's experience into an offering, into a sharing. And it's been an overwhelming privilege to be able to do that.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to have storytellers on the panel. It makes my job a lot easier, so thank you.
And I'm an introvert.
Well, I'm more of a numbers person. So I'm a COO for hire. So I go into small, medium-sized businesses that have made it to $100,000, $250,000 in revenue, and I help them get to that $1 million, that $1 million mindset. I'm also president and founder now because I've hired an executive director of the Leadership Lab. And the Leadership Lab does career, academic, and transitional one-on-one coaching and workshops for minorities, LGBTQ, and veterans. I happen to be Native American and bisexual and a woman. And
Yes.
I'm a triple threat.
I
like
love
to
it.
say.
Kickball change.
And so I'm very excited that we are probably going to hit the 500,000 mark in year 3 for the Leadership Lab, and I'm able to hire a full team, and we're moving up more north. We're from Portland, Oregon, and so we're opening up a satellite office in Seattle and maybe heading to Vancouver, Canada. I'm very excited about that. And then I also have a podcast called Find Your Tribe. So where I interview people, and the question I ask them is, what does Find Your Tribe mean to you?
I want to be on that.
Yeah, it's,
Well,
I think everyone in this room could probably be on that podcast, and it's a lot of fun. So I recommend that. So we talked a little bit, Elaine, you talked a little bit about your superpower of visibility. I'm hoping that you, Eduardo, Annie, if you could go into your superpowers a little bit more. And really, this is a question that we touched on in the podcast. And it's fine if you kind of go back to what you shared there, but especially kind of given our lived experiences of being LGBT in the world, some of the challenges that we face. How does that inform how you show up in work? Is that an asset? And if so, can you just describe a little bit more of what those specific superpowers might be?
It's such a loaded question.
it is.
Would you like to? Anyone else like to go first? I'll take it.
You can have the floor.
Love it. So there are two that I thought about. I think the first one, I have a girlfriend who described me as being a molecule shifter. I was like, that's amazing. It's like the Matrix, but that I have an ability to walk in a room and shift the energy in the room. And that's a pretty powerful gift, and I think I've always been able to do that, especially when I'm following my light, right? And I think there's a cost to it. Going back to the conversation we were having about introvert and extrovert, it's like I was thinking on the way here about the superheroes that, like, when the Flash lets the light out, he's like depleted. Do you know what I mean? Or after they do like their feat of superpowerdom, like there's a physical cost to the exertion of whatever that is. And I would say the reason why I believe that I'm going to notice how I limited myself in calling it a bit of a superpower, right? My superpower is that I am a molecule shifter, is authenticity.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I'm going to go back to what the gentleman, the Latino man who spoke on the panel the first day. I had this nightmare. I was staying actually with my godfather, who's gay. He came to visit in New York. We had a beautiful night. He had a hotel downtown. We stayed. I stayed because I live in Brooklyn. And I woke up, and in this nightmare, what happened is I was in some nondescript house, and people that I loved, people that knew me, approached me, and they said, Eduardo, it's taken a lot for us to say this to you, and we've been wanting to say this to you for a really long time, but you really are too much, and you need to really tone it down. Whoa. And everyone around you is lying, and everyone is in agreement that it's just all a little bit too much. Oh. And when I woke up, like, it was like cold sweat. Yeah. I was like, wow, it was like a really deep self-loathing, hatred, bullying. And what's so interesting is, like, if I can identify it, it's the voice of my father, right? Who I love. I've been out for over 20 some odd years, and my father's the kryptonite. He has the power to be like, and as a Cuban man, as a Cuban man of a certain generation, I think having a gay son, or a son who could display feminine characteristics, there was no greater affront to his masculinity, to his Cubanness, to who we are. Like, that was such a source of shame that my authenticity, or people are saying you're too much, I think is coded language for too gay. And I think that's something that I've been fighting my entire life, because I was bullied and picked on, growing up as a kid. When that truth came up, I immediately went to Facebook I have a pretty active Facebook following, and I was like, this was the nightmare, and F it. I am who I am. I am what I am. I am my own special creation. I have Show-tunitis, which is another special, ability. And then my father posted on Facebook, I think there's some truth about the dream. Then my father actually verbalized what that was. And I was like, well, clearly there it is. But I think that as a gay man and as a man who identifies as gay, who came out at 18, I was so present to the gift of my godfather, who is 18 years older than me, being out and gay, the power of visibility. Like if I spent my entire developmental life ashamed of who I was, and the moment that I came out, I was like, that's done. And, part of our journey as queer people, is dealing with our own internalized homophobia and the way in which we were framed by a world that was homophobic, or at least I can speak from my experience, that I was framed in a world that was homophobic. And as a public speaking coach, every time that I speak, when I'm leading in front of groups, specifically groups that are dominated in corporate spaces or spaces by men, straight men, people who I perceive of as being straight men, my biggest fear is what they're thinking is, and I'm going to say something atrocious and horrible, is who's the faggot? And what I have to do is step that aside, acknowledge that that's just a thought. It's not true. It's not real. And I'm going to be who I am without apology and lead with my authenticity. And when I do that, I think the molecules shift because it's rare. To find someone show up into a space unapologetic, who they are, completely and totally free, is like a breath of fresh air. So that's the muscle that I continuously flex. I'm continuously learning how to do it. And I do work all over the world. So I find myself coming into countries and spaces where I'm kind of gauging what are the cues. And no matter where I am, if I'm authentic to who I am, it works. And it's loved and it's cherished. And I think it is a human desire to be seen and to be heard authentically for who you are.
Yes, thank you for that. That was great. Thank you. The molecules.
Thank God this is recorded because I didn't even know what I was like.
You can listen to that again.
I can listen to
Get
that
a
again.
Transcription. That was beautiful.
He might have to pay royalties for this
Yes.
song now. You just cost him big bucks.
I did. Thank you, Jerry Herman.
I love this idea of a molecule shifter, and that's the first that I've heard. I've asked this question now almost 100 times, and that was really amazing. So I'm always surprised with kind of new insights. And Annie or Elaine, in addition to kind of this idea of molecules shifting, authenticity, visibility, do any of those superpowers resonate with you, or do you have others that just from your lived experience you use in your business?
Yeah, I think that one of the things I have, many people have, is a sense of empathy. And especially as a white woman, there's not a lot of white women who experience, being othered. Maybe as a woman, you're othered. But but I can recognize, privilege and lack of privilege, and it sort of gives me a built-in start on the intersectionality and the stuff that we were talking about the other day. I remember I was on a phone call conference. My anchor client does a lot of conference calls because we work from everywhere, and we were talking about diversity and inclusion. And there was one person on the call I didn't know, but everybody else I knew was white. And so we started talking about communications for people of color. And I said, excuse me, I don't know this guy, but is there anybody who's a person of color on this call? And there was sort of this ashamed silence on the other end as the guy I didn't know says, I'm white. I said, maybe the next time we convene, we can find some people of color to join this conversation. Yeah. So it's possible that I would have that muscle even if I were straight, but I think that knowing how it feels to need to put yourself out there, and being a femme with long hair, there's a thing called femme invisibility. So I am not always coded as a lesbian. And when is it appropriate to say, well, by the way, I'm a lesbian. I mean, which I said on the conference call, everybody knew that. So there's a little bit of, that's one of the reasons they had me writing about diversity. But, when is it appropriate? You lead with your talents, you lead with the work that you do. I'm an award-winning speechwriter. That's why people hire me, but I'm also a lesbian, which gives me a different experience than the straight people in the room. So I don't know how you sum that up into a superpower, but.
Yeah, well, I think this idea of empathy and self-awareness, and for you, having experienced maybe microaggressions or people not considering your relationships or the people important to you, and that you're aware of, in a business setting, who might not be at the table, the voice is not at the table. And even if you're not representing those voices, you can at least speak out, and you did. Yeah. And I think that's a great example. Thank you.
And for me, so I just came out as
Yay,
bisexual.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We are
Welcome
family.
I know.
I'm just going to keep on giving you more royalty.
Well, it's interesting because I never thought I needed to come out as bisexual because I was just Annie. I was always just Annie. I was always just a fabulous Annie. Annie's,
The sun will come out tomorrow.
You're going to cost him so much money. But one of, I think, my superpowers is being, not closeted, but I guess I was a closeted bisexual, but also as a closeted entrepreneur. So in my 40s, when I hit my 40s, I came out as an entrepreneur. I came out as bisexual. And also I'm recently diagnosed with cancer. And so right now I'm in the middle of treatments. But really, I think my big superpower right now is my intuition, listening to my gut. And also, just because I've been diagnosed with cancer doesn't mean that I'm going to be giving up or stopping what I'm doing. I still have that intuition, and which leads to like that $1 million mindset that I also give to other people as my gift when I'm working with my clients. And I'm also working with the Leadership Lab. I remember when I was teaching a workshop, filling in for somebody, and this young gal, she was probably in her, I say young, in the 20s. And
That's young.
That's young.
20s, yeah. And she's like, what do you mean you can do anything? And I'm like, I am a Native American, bisexual woman that grew up in a trailer, no money, drug-addicted mother, non-existent alcoholic father. Look at who I am now.
Yeah.
And so anyways, that's, I feel like I have I guess maybe a little basket of superpowers that I like to have, by my side at all times. So, but intuition is like, I think that the intuition came because I had to be careful about who I was. Because when I'm in one world, I'm this one person. And then when I'm in this other world, I'm this other person. And so that gut intuition.
Yeah. I think that's really, really helpful, this intuition. And I think that's part of knowing where you're safe, where you feel safe, where you don't feel safe. And the experience of coming out, it's not a static experience. You have to do it again and again. Yeah. And in the workplace setting, that there's a risk to that, right? I mean, even when you run your own business. And I think that's a nice segue to this kind of next question, which is, we think about workplace culture a lot from the lens, at least like one lens is just from the LGBT lens, right? And we also have the power as business owners to consciously create the cultures that we want, right? And we want to treat people in the platinum role in the way that they want to be treated, right? So I'm curious, and I think this could be helpful for other business owners in the room, as well as folks who are working for an employer. What's one thing that you're doing in your business to really communicate that your culture is inclusive, right? That you're willing to reflect that platinum role, especially for folks who feel underrepresented in the workplace?
Being your authentic self from day one, and also having, I don't want to say rules, but showing and being who you are and being a role model for your employees and for the people that are around you that you do work with, I think is really important.
I believe it's also ensuring that everything that you produce has visibility. Yep. So, when I host these international events and I'm, bringing cohorts of women, like I'm purposefully including, African American, Latino, Asian American, different, I'm purposefully bringing these stories together, and my platform is a platform to amplify those voices. So I'm also speaking the language of inclusion. I always lead with I'm gay. And I think as a gay man, for me, what that does is it has me control the narrative, right? So now we all know that that's there, right? Now then we can all deal with it.
Yeah.
And I think whether people assume it or don't assume it or whatever, it doesn't matter. They're like, well, we kind of knew. It was like, awesome, great. Now we're all on the same page. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But it it's really interesting. It was during I'm from Miami, Florida, and it was right after the Trump victory. And what happens in Miami, I have the privilege, and I don't know what the political parties, and I'm not going to assume any political parties in this space, but my parents are very proud Cuban Democrats, which is very rare. So I was raised in a liberal household. The gay thing was not on their in their mind space at all. So that was a shift. But I was having dinner or with some friends of mine, some long-term family friends, some of whom I knew had voted for Trump. And I led in the conversation saying, well, as a gay man, blah, blah, blah. And the woman afterwards said, why did you say that? Because we don't see you as a gay man, we just see you as Eddie. And I said, the reason why I led with it is because I don't know who at the table knows that I'm gay. And the moment that I say it, now it's out in the open for us to address or talk about. And also they can check their own homophobia or whatever. Now they know that that's something. We're not coding or speaking around anything. It's all out there. So now we can talk. And I own the narrative. I'm the one who said it. I've brought it into the space, and now I'm managing that conversation.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
And also, we just see you as Eddie, not as Eddie inclusive of
Eddie
everything.
Inc.
Right?
I love that.
Yeah.
So several years ago, I wrote a speech for the CEO, who is a straight white dude, and it was. I know you're shocked.
I mean, hashtag no big deal.
It's shocked.
Hashtag rare.
Shocking. But so it was a speech to either college kids who were, they wanted to show how wonderful the company is, or maybe it was graduate students they wanted to attract. But anyway, as part of the speech, I had him say, as a straight white man. And I was, and today I would say as a straight white cis man, but I wasn't there, but I heard that the room just started buzzing and all the kids were like, he said he was straight. He said he was straight. I mean, not that it's a shock that he's straight, but that he would notice that that's not a universal condition. And so that's one way that I bring myself to the things that I write. And I've started to use, and I can't think of the words that I use now, but gender inclusive language when I talk, obviously just I don't talk about men, women. I talk about whatever your gender expression is. That's what I say, gender expression. So that's how I bring who I am to my work.
I've had and the power of being out and the power of being visible, right, in our alphabet, nomenclature. There's a part of our community that I've only just now met. And that's people who identify as ace or asexual. And I just this year met 2 men who identify as male who are asexual and outed themselves to me. And I was like, thank God. Because I didn't have a frame of reference for it. I did, and it's so amazing that now in this space we're starting to have our brothers and sisters that identify as asexual presenting themselves, and outing themselves, so that now we know. Because again, for one of the men, he could pass as a straight white man, and the assumption is like, why aren't you dating women, or why aren't you, so that there's all of this language about an assumption of an experience of his, which is not his experience. I just felt so honored, for him to share that. And I said, well, my godfather said to me when I came out of the closet at 18, which was congratulations, so it was such a gift.
Yeah. I think there's such power when you do lead with, I am a gay man, or I'm ace, or, and it reminds me of a story when I was at Pride just this year in Portland, and I was podcasting there, and someone came up and was like, why is it the out entrepreneur? Why isn't it just the entrepreneur? And so, right, and this is someone within the community. So, I kind of explained some of the economic disparities, and, I got a little wonky. And but I think he kind of understood that there's a need to have the space, to share our stories, because there still is a lot of discrimination and a lot of barriers we still have to overcome. So I think holding that space just to be yourself as the CEO of your business, right, and being a possibility model for your team or for your clients is really powerful, and we can't forget that. And so, really good reminder there.
On the other side of that, I was dating a woman earlier this year, past tense dating, and one of the reasons we're not dating anymore, she said, you should market yourself as the lesbian speechwriter. And she thought that was brilliant because I can write speeches for lesbians. I'm like, I can write speeches for anyone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a balance, right? Because you want to be out and you want to be visible. You also don't want to be tokenized.
Yeah.
Right. So it is definitely a balance.
I mean, I'm already in the diversity. When I came to this my anchor client, I came with years of experience in financial services, writing about business, and so they hired two speechwriters at the time, and they gave the guy the business part of it, and he was like a fiction writer. He had no idea what business was, and they had to hold his hand every step of the way. They put me in with diversity and the softer things like recruiting. And I never understood that because I could write the business stuff anyway.
Yeah.
One of the words you just said, like
sexism.
The word token is kind of like a trigger word for me.
Yeah.
Being Native American, I'm, and being an entrepreneur and having success in my life and the story that I come from. Yeah, it's just like that word token. It's just, I just realized recently, in probably the last 5 years, of how people in the community, not only in the LGBTQ community, but also just in our business community in the Pacific Northwest, how I've been kind of, air quoting, used a lot as a poster child of like, look what you can do and be successful. But at the time, I wasn't really being my authentic self. That's one of the things that's really inspiring, what you said earlier about being my authentic self and getting out there and singing on the top of the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't do it.
I'm saying yeah.
I was leading you in.
Yes.
I feel like we can have
Climb every mountain.
The royalties
I sing
are stacking
too,
up.
and I have always refused to sing I Am What I Am
Oh.
because, my opinion, I'm not a what, I'm a who.
Oh.
And I always
I like
wanted
that.
to ask Jerry Herman why it's
Yeah.
I am what I am, when who is a better syllable to sing
Yeah.
anyway.
I am who I am.
Right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
We'll have to take that up with Jerry Herman.
So, Eduardo, you had mentioned your Kryptonite. And so, we're on the theme of superpowers. I like Superman. So when Kryptonite shows up in your business, right, when things get tough, how do your superpowers play in? And if not your superpowers, if they feel depleted, right, who do you turn to for help? How do you work through those challenges, especially if limiting beliefs pop up of, who am I to do this? I'm not good enough. All that self-talk, the stories that we tell
Who
ourselves.
can I turn
Oh,
to?
God.
Like I'm setting myself up here. Sorry.
I mean, it's a disease, and it's really flaring up right now. It's called Kryptonite. It's a real thing. So I had the real gift. I have an advisory board for my business. And I think for any entrepreneur, having an advisory board is extremely useful. They don't have fiduciary responsibility over the business, and they're a cohort of trusted advisors. I felt like entrepreneurship at the beginning was an extremely lonely experience. I don't have a trust fund. This was all funded through my sweat equity and blood, sweat, and tears. And there were lots of time alone in an apartment or at a Starbucks, figuring things out and not knowing what I was doing. And, I've done a lot of work on myself. I'm in 17 million different coaching programs. Do you know what I mean? Like I am doing the work on myself. And it was really useful to bring together a group of people who I trusted, who believed in the mission and the vision, who I could speak to when I was stuck. And it's something other than people who are just friends, So it's not like the bitching and complaining gallery, where you can like bitch and complain, but people who have your best interests at heart and who can offer you advice. You don't have to take their advice. There's no like responsibility to say, I told you so, but they're people who can really listen and from their perspective or through their experience or their point of view can offer you options. And I found that to be really useful. And I can speak to people about it afterwards. I basically meet with them quarterly, and it's a huge, huge, huge gift.
How did you find your advisory board? I'm just curious about that.
So I was doing a workshop, and I met this man, and he's like, this is what I do. I really believe in power of advisory boards. I love what you're up to. I love, it was like one of those like first dates that wasn't a date. And then he was like, I'm all about everything that you are and everything that you do. I believe in you. Let's do this. And his special, and what he loves to do is put together advisory boards. So that's his belief that for budding entrepreneurs, that's really useful. And if you think about people who, with a certain level of privilege, who's like, your father may be a multimillionaire, founded I don't know how many companies, and so is your uncle, and so is your cousin, and your brother is an investment banker, and that's not my ecosystem. So I have to create an ecosystem that is supporting me of people who, again, I trust and I know, and who I've met along the way, who have taken an interest and are committed to the work.
Thank you, Elena.
Well, I've heard people talk about advisory boards, and every time I hear it, I write it down, and then I think, oh, no, I couldn't possibly ask anybody to take an interest in me.
Yeah.
And so I've never done it. And so I don't know whether it's I couldn't possibly ask anybody to take an interest in me. I think that's part of it, maybe 75% of it. And the other 25% is, oh, but then I'd have to do what they tell me.
Yeah.
That might be uncomfortable. I'm coaching with a woman this year who is giving me some tough love. And I know she's right, but damn, it's hard.
Yes.
So what was the question?
Your kryptonite.
How do you overcome your kryptonite?
Yeah.
My kryptonite is marketing, which is bad
Yes.
kryptonite for an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I'm in a couple of mastermind groups with some really smart women, and I coach with people, and I'm getting better. My networking skills have improved. I was very comfortable here this whole week, but I still haven't gotten it together to say, would you be my advisory board? So I will think about that.
So I had a mastermind group of people that we got together once a week and we worked together. So every Saturday morning we would get together at my offices and we would sit there and we'd get shit done for 6 hours. And we would have a 10-minute break and we would discuss what we were doing and goals for the next hour. And so we'd keep each other accountable and we would achieve our goals. So what happened, though, is why our mastermind group is not together anymore. I know that they are still meeting, but I have left the group that I put together. And our group was very diverse. We had 2 black men, 1 gay black man, another white woman, and myself. It was a small group. So we were very diverse, and we had also diverse companies. But I outgrew them because my business started doing so well because I was so on point and getting shit done. And so now I'm looking for that next mastermind group, that next group of people that has that $1 million mindset, because that's where I need to start thinking. That's my kryptonite. I don't think of myself as being this $1 million company. I'm like, oh, if I make $250,000 this year, I'm going to be great. I can pay my bills. I can, pay my employees. It's been great. But I don't really think like I could be this multi-million-dollar business. And as an entrepreneur, it's, that's my kryptonite. It's just something new to me. So it's difficult to explain, I guess.
It's interesting, the kryptonite versus the superpower, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that sometimes one can lead into the other. I think that one thing that's really useful is self-reflection. And sometimes I think it's really hard for an entrepreneur to like be the face and the action and the driver and all of that other stuff, be the president, the CEO, the accountant, the CPA, like the multiple roles, especially as you're starting out, that you have to occupy. There was an assessment that I did. It's called the Kolbe assessment. I don't know if anyone has ever taken it. And there's this metric, it's KOLBE. And there's one metric that's a quick start. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 9 quick start, which is very typical of entrepreneurs, which means it's like, squirrel, go, squirrel, 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 squirrel. It's shiny. I have an idea. I'm going to go. I'm going to drive. I'm going to go da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yes.
And I think what my kryptonite is that, like, I'm so mission, I am so big picture, that I think sometimes what hinders me is the ability to, like, the follow through at the end. Like, I can get us there, but picking up the pieces on the back end, like that part is where it's like the comet. Do you know what I mean? It's like a bit of a comet effect. I'm also highly creative, so like there's a part of me that's like this, that I get very into that creative space. And I think there's a functionality, there's a system side, which is not my superpower. And I think one of the things, if you're building a is it Legion of Power? What is it? No, the Justice League. It was the Legion of Doom. But what was the other one? It was the Legion of Doom.
The Justice League.
The Justice League. Look at me going back to, I love those cartoons as a kid. Or your Voltron. You need the red and the orange, all the different colors. It's identifying through the self-reflection, what is my superpower? And how do I build a team of people with superpowers that are complementary of my superpower?
Yes.
So then you have a Justice League, not, like there's a lot of good that I can do as myself with my superpower. And if I am bringing in a Wonder Woman and a Hulk and an Iron Man, and
He pointed at you.
a
when he said
Catwoman.
Hulk, Rhodes.
Do you know what I mean? Yes.
I like being the Iron Woman, even though I wanted to be the Wonder Woman, but I like the Iron Woman.
Be Iron Woman. Iron Woman isn't taken. Yeah.
I think what you're talking about is this. Has anyone read the book Rocket Fuel? Okay, it's a really good book, and it's this idea when you're running a business, oftentimes, you can take an assessment to identify: are you the visionary, or are you that systems implementer person? Because there's this kind of combination, this dual, like you need both, and it's rare that if one person kind of embodies both of those traits. And so it's really great that you were talking about your advisory board, masterminds, just having someone to be accountable to, because if you are, it sounds like we've got a lot of visionaries here. So just if you are that, getting that support to say, I'm really good at the big idea and I need some support around just kind of the steps to get there. And if you're kind of a solopreneur and on a smaller team, just taking that coaching approach is really helpful. So,
and I'm hoping that people are out there that are minorities like myself. Let's lead together. Let's be leaders for the young, millennials and so forth that are starting these companies and these businesses. I look for an advisory board and it's all older white men. And it really depresses me. And so it makes me want to strive even more to be a leader in my community and, be the vice president of like our Portland Area Business Association and so forth. Yeah. So I'm hoping more minorities out there that are listening, come on, let's go. Let's do it.
That's a great segue. So on the next question that I have is, as you are moving forward, you have the vision, you're the $1 million business that you want, Annie, whatever your goals are in business, how do you see kind of having an arm of social good where kind of the disparities that LGBT folks in particular face, especially in the workplace? So are there ways that you're thinking about kind of empowering LGBT folks now using your business as kind of a tool for social good? Have you thought about it? Are you doing something about it? I think that could be helpful for other business owners in the room.
That's why my sister and I started the Leadership Lab. We wanted to give back. We were coaches and consultants, and we really wanted to have coaching accessible to anybody that could use it. We have a 98% success rate. We help 268 people either go into a new career or go into academic, either a vocational school or some sort of community college or a 4-year college. 98%. That's awesome. Because there's that one-on-one accountability and being able to work one-on-one with that person. So that's how I'm giving back to my community, is being able to give what I needed and what my sister and I needed as children and as teenagers. So that's one of the ways that I'm doing it. Also, volunteering on my board as a board member, or even, attending events like this, meeting other members, putting together mastermind groups, being a leader.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the things that I I've been asked, I have the privilege of doing a lot of work with women, and I've been asked, one of the first things that I'm almost always asked when I talk about these women's groups that I lead, it's like, why women? And
Because we're fabulous.
yes, clearly, absolutely, hello. And one of the things that because it's like I'm healing while I'm also providing space for healing. And what I've realized is that the biggest shame that I had for myself with my homosexuality was my femininity. So I feel like I'm healing my feminine as I'm holding space with women. And I think I have the empathy, of that experience, to be able to listen to truth and authenticity and power that is formed from their own authenticity, not from some projected, this is what you need to sound like, or this is what you need to behave like, or this is who you need to be. None of that. It's like, who are you? Where are you meeting me at? And how do we unleash that truth and that power from your core to let that out? And I think as I hold space for that, I heal myself as I share my story. And I also create the opportunity for my clients, for the people who I have the privilege of working with, to similarly stand in that space and own and heal themselves. And I think that the part of the reason why I'm doing this work is because it's all about giving back. There are many things that I could have done, and the privilege of supporting and amplifying the voices of the people who are poised to make the biggest difference is, to me, one of the most gratifying things I can do. And when I work with my clients, I don't think about my work with them. I think of the hundreds of thousands and millions of people who they get to touch through their story and through their message. And that's the impact that I get to make in the world, and I get to disappear a little bit. It's one of my favorite things about singing in a choir or is in harmony. I'm there, but you don't know that I'm there. You don't always have to be the soloist. You can always
Eduardo,
add.
I find it difficult that anyone could not know where you are.
And it's beautiful to disappear.
Yeah.
It's one of the gifts to disappear. I had the privilege of directing and producing events. And one of the beautiful things, I'm there.
Yeah.
And I can also stand in the back and watch it all unfold, and then just be present to the mystery and the wonder. And it really is a mystery. I love that line from Shakespeare in Love, because always when you're in giving a speech, it's like everything goes wrong.
Yeah.
And then you stand up on stage and then everything goes right. And it's like, how does that happen? It's a mystery. And it's in trust. And I think it's ultimately standing in your authenticity and your truth, and with the intention of standing and connecting with your audience, generosity. I think that's what seals the deal.
What was the question?
The question was, how do you use your business as a tool for social good?
Yeah. So I blog a lot, and often I blog about LGBT issues and also just diversity in general and unconscious. Actually, I made a page on my website for NGLCC, so it's Benedict, 2 N's, 2 T's /NGLCC. And I put an offer there, but I also put a couple of blogs on there that resonated with me from things that other speakers have said. So I do that, and I, am myself. Right now, I'm volunteering with a political campaign that in an area that's crucial to keeping the Senate. So I consider that the contribution to the LGBT community. And then, I'm always on the lookout for LGBT youth nonprofits. So I'll look harder. I just moved to Cape Cod full time, so I'm kind of getting myself established.
Thank you. This is really powerful. Just the idea, it sounds like folks just in the business and the work that you're doing. I love, Eduardo, what you're talking about being a healer, really supporting folks, getting coaching, writing, just, kind of putting messages out there that are positive, and that alone is really kind of showing up as leaders in the community, as business owners, talking about matters that are important, entering that in conversation. So we're kind of rounding out the hour, and I'm curious if you have any advice for folks just thinking about launching a business. We all know how hard that is, right? So for LGBT folks, especially those folks who are trying to start up businesses with sweat equity in particular, what's one piece of advice that you would give those folks just to get started and to stay inspired in those first couple of years, which are really, really difficult?
I think it's probably really hard to start a business. I mean, it's hard to start a business anyway, but it's especially hard if you don't have a good sense of yourself and your gifts and your talents. So I bet when you were more in the closet, you never would have been able to. No, of course not. No. So it's having come into your full self and embracing your authenticity and who you are has enabled you to give that to your clients. So that's the first thing you need to do is try and get rid of your internalized whatever phobia you happen to have.
I would also say just do it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just jump in. You know, had I known everything that I would have needed to know to do it, I wouldn't have done it. You know,
True.
and I think that there's a part of us that may be a little honed in on being a little too perfect. Mm-hmm. You know, I definitely have overachiever overachieveritis. And I think had I not, if I really knew everything that would have had to go into place, I would have been paralyzed. So I think the other thing is that allow it to be really connected to something you're passionate about. Let it be, like, to me, what I do doesn't feel like work. Mm-hmm. It feels like a natural extension of who I am. And that's been a life journey to get to that point. You know, I am 41, I exercise and moisturize. And it really is it is at the intersection of many, like I was an actor for 15 years, I was a professional photographer. I mean, there have been lots of career paths that have gotten me to where I am standing now. And at the end of the, you know, my business is called Fearless Communicators, and the word fearless showed up. I was once at an audition, and a director said, "You're fearless, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." I just like kind of appropriated it.
Sure.
But then it was really interesting. But I was plagued with fear.
Yeah.
All the time. And then when I was thinking about my business and thinking about naming it, it used to be called Speak the Speech, which comes from Hamlet, and it's very obscure and it's not sexy at all. And then the word fearless showed up because someone had said that to me once. And then I thought, wow. And I looked at it and it said, it's not fear gone. It's not fear done. It's not fear without. It's fear less. Yeah. So it's not about getting rid of fear, but it's about standing powerfully in the face of what you fear over and over and over again so that it lessens, so that it diminishes. You're a human being. You're going to experience fear. That's what happens. We have fear. We have 4 main emotions as human beings. Fear is one of them. You're not going to get rid of it. It's always there. You're alive. Your heart's beating. Awesome. And I think that being an entrepreneur is about stepping into the fear constantly. Most of the fear that we have is irrational, and you can distinguish that not being liked or not being good enough or all these things that stop us, none of that is really true. It is some belief that we are carrying that may be connected to our personal experience. For me, that's definitely connected to my experience as a gay man and the shame and the fear and the doubt that I had about myself. But that's something that I think anyone in our LGBTQA2 community and also any human being can relate to that plague of self-doubt that we carry. So I would say, don't let that stop you. Jump in.
So I'm going to be the nerdy and practical one.
Okay.
Again, I'm a 9 quick start. Just start it. Just go.
So I'm going to be nerdy and practical. Budget. Learn how much it costs for you to live and how much it costs for you to grow your business. Put together a 3-year budget plan. Put together a list of what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. Learning Excel and how to do formulas, checking your budget on a daily, weekly basis is very important. I know people in here are like, oh, come on.
I love it. You're such the CFO for hire. It is so good, but it's such a superpower. But it's such a superpower. It's like, that's why I need people like you in my life, because it's like, one of the things that I really had to learn, I had somebody who said to me, people who hate numbers see numbers and only see numbers. Mm-hmm. People who love numbers see numbers and see the story.
Stories. Yep.
And there's a story, there's behavior in numbers. And I think that as an entrepreneur, I think like that work that I've been like, when I started looking at my numbers, when I really started looking at my QuickBooks, when I really started looking at my profit and loss statement, all of a sudden my business started expanding and my business started thriving, because all of a sudden I was related to what was really happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know my job is somewhat done when we can talk about profit and loss, and you A, understand what I'm talking about, and B, the bottom line number. And especially a lot of entrepreneurs, they get, when they first start out, they get upset and they're like, I can never do this, and I'm just going to give up. And it's like, see how much it costs you to live. Like, be completely honest. That includes going out, that includes your groceries, your gas, and then how much does it cost to run your business? You'd be really surprised by the numbers and how easy it will be for you to live and to survive and grow your business, as long as you know those numbers.
Absolutely.
I'll also share, Rhodes, I have these little bracelets that say fearless that I'm giving to everybody in the room.
Excellent.
So you guys remember that you're fearless.
Yes, I love that. So everyone gets a bracelet. You're fearless. There's a little palm card here. So if you want to check out the show, you get to hear guests just like all of these amazing panelists. So thank you so much for being here. It's close to the end of the hour, and I always learn a ton from you all. So thank you again for spending your morning with me. And check out the show.
Thank you, Rhodes.
Thank you, Rhodes.
Yes, thank you for doing this.
Absolutely.
And just a moment of acknowledgement for you and who you are as an entrepreneur and everything that you've done in your own life, to stand as an out entrepreneur and to hold space to amplify the voices of other out entrepreneurs and create a pathway for other dreamers, all over the world to imagine a path for their own independence financially, economically, in their identity and their self-expression. It's really profound. Yes. So thank you for who you are.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yes. All right.